Alright guys, it's time for your Sunday sit down with yours truly, Francis Maxwell, or as I go on Twitter, Francis_Maxwell, and on Instagram, Francis Maxwell host. Shameless plug, but I don't care. We will move forward to discuss the Premier League's action. Manchester United, of course, is going to take up most of our time in the discussion, so I'll save that till last. I'll give you a brief overview of my thoughts and everything else. What I'm expecting is happening. Manchester City are devouring teams. Kevin De Bruyne, the weight of Kevin De Bruyne's pass is astounding. The guy never chooses the wrong pass. Even when you think he's going to choose the wrong pass and he hesitates a little bit, it's like, oh, and then it still ends up finding its way perfectly gifted on a silver platter. He is the garçon of the Premier League, and Pep Guardiola can only sit and just bask in his brilliance and be delighted with the fact that he has a player on his team. And hence why I mentioned in the previous clip, which caused a little bit of uproar, the fact that I said Guardiola has a better overall team and the individual ingredients to win a Champions League with Manchester City than what he did at Bayern Munich. They were lacking a Kevin De Bruyne, and some people were telling me that he had an Arjen Robben in his prime. Yeah, understandably, Robben, whether or not he's able to be actually be on the field or not, plays a lot wider, comes inside, doesn't bring into play as much other players. He can do that. He was fantastic at doing it in his prime. But it's just the ability that Pep Guardiola now has to run Kevin De Bruyne as if he was running a Lionel Messi. Now, I'm not saying they're the same player. Relax. I know you might have just blurred out everything else and just heard that and went insane. I'm talking about the way he likes to run his system and how De Bruyne just kind of floats in that really dangerous area where he can get the most out of him. And every single move that comes through central is running through Kevin De Bruyne. And he can find a way to peel himself off wide left or wide right. And his passing ability is second to none. So Manchester City devour their opponent. Arsenal devour a whole City with a spectacular strike from Xhaka, who celebrated like this. I think that was directed at me, saying, don't slag off Arsene Wenger's transfer signings when you can bang in 40-yard belters. Either way, I'll take that with a pinch of salt. Good victory for them. I already touched on Liverpool on Friday. You can check that recap out. Tottenham Hotspur found it very hard up against Sunderland, who did well at kind of parking the bus and relied on a few moments of magnificence from their goalkeeper, but Harry Kane eventually was gifted one on a silver platter and put it into the bottom corner. So let's get to Manchester United. The main issue that people are talking about is the fact that they conceded 3 goals, right? And again, I think that's almost a way of deflecting away from what another problem is, which people don't even want to acknowledge because they spent hundreds of millions of pounds to assist in this, and that's their attacking threat. 2 shots on target today against Watford. They created measly 5 chances that were considered chances according to statistics against Watford. That is simply not good enough. If you want to win games, you have to score goals. I talked about it against Manchester City. People suddenly thought that Man United were back in the game because they had a couple of chances. Those chances were gifted to them by Claudio Bravo's errors and long balls into the box, very reminiscent of what LVG would do when things started to get tough. Launch it into Fellaini, launch it into a big man up top and work off the scraps. People don't want to acknowledge that Jose Mourinho is up against the wall right now with his attacking threat. They're not clicking. Pogba is wasted in that kind of retreated role. Fellaini, headless chicken, again, had a good couple of games to start the season because they were playing against lesser opponents. Now they come out against an opponent with some belief and some attacking charisma, and they just crumble. The same goal was almost scored twice in a row before they got the penalty kick. Is getting to the byline, cutting it back, midfield runners streaming into the box, basically players peeling off of their marker just to have an easy finish inside the box. It was baffling at times, and Jose is blaming that certainly, I think he broke it up into 3 things he couldn't control. One of them was refereeing decisions, blaming one in final, blaming one against Manchester City, and blaming one here. I don't want to listen to that. He didn't address the fact that they're not creating enough chances, enough clear-cut chances with the attacking threat that they have with Rashford, with Zlatan, with Pogba, who should be pushing high up the park, and Mata. They've got talented players in there, and Watford made them look mediocre in comparison to their attacking threat. Every time they move forward, they look like they had a chance of scoring. So as much as all of the headlines talk about Manchester United concede 3 goals, Jose Mourinho loses 3 games on the trot for the first time since 2006. There's something that has to be said and has to be acknowledged, is that I saw signs of this against Hull City, and Rashford comes on, bails him out with a moment of brilliance from Wayne Rooney. Zlatan hasn't been playing well, and I thought Rashford, when he kind of moved into that central role, and he played more in the vicinity of a central striker position with when he started to come inside and Rooney started to walk off him and Ibra. I thought he was more dangerous, twice as much dangerous as Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but people don't want to admit it because he is the big name signing in the team and they want to get the most out of the Pogbas and Zlatans. But you're already 6 points behind a team that is on a wrecking mission. 6 points behind is hard to make up. Now I understand Premier League last year, you're thinking anyone can drop points, but can you watch that Manchester City team and think to yourself, yeah, they're going to drop points? You have to rely on you being consistent and then them losing 2 games to catch up. Now it can happen, there's no doubt. Questions have not yet been asked as much of Manchester City lately with how they will defend against teams that are moving the ball freely. I'd be excited to see them against an Arsenal who seem to be clicking somewhat in the attacking third. So I think that's going to be a question to Pep Guardiola's team. But the way they're playing going forward, you can concede 1 or 2 goals. But when they're banging in 4 goals a game, 5 goals against teams that, again, should be able to withstand some sort of attacking pressure, they're just cutting through them easily. They're choosing easy options. They have their choices in the box of 3, 4, 5 players to cut the ball back to. Manchester United are struggling to even conjure up a chance, and again relying on defensive errors to poke the ball into the back of the net. So yes, there's defensive problems in there that I will bring up and people should address. But don't just bypass the fact that they only created 2 clear chances because Zlatan plays up top or because they spent big money on attacking players. That doesn't give them an excuse for the fact that they were way below average both defensively and in attacking mind today. So I'm looking at what Sky Sports ran when it came to this. And they basically are discussing that what happens when you've got Ander Herrera and Michael Carrick on the bench is that they're not short of central midfielders, but they don't really have any sort of chemistry in the middle. That you have a Paul Pogba running up and down the park trying to make something happen when he's 20, 30, 40 yards away from goal. It's very different compared to the way that he did it at Juventus, where he was able to get the ball almost in that left winger position or left central attacking midfielder and then cut inside onto his dominant foot and then link up play. But instead he's having to do donkey work back and forth and try to make up for the space that is conceded with Fellaini and him playing together. Mourinho has to address that. It's midfield winners that are causing the problem. It's Kevin De Bruyne that's causing the problem against them. In that clear derby game where he had just all the space to basically pull out a cigar and just sun his ginger self as he's taking the ball into your defensive line, basically free of whatever he wants to do. So I think that the problem there has to be that you have to find a sort of trifecta in the midfield if you're going to play a 4-5-1 or a 4-2-3-1 or whatever else you're going to play. There needs to be some sort of chemistry where they can move the ball amongst each other. Wayne Rooney's pass completion rate in Watford's half was down to 77.8%. And Pogba's was 71.7%. They're not keeping the ball in the final third. And Wayne Rooney is the forefront of the criticism. And I think he played very poorly again today. But you cannot just bypass the other players that deserve criticism because they have high price tag. As I mentioned with Paul Pogba, he needs to be criticised as well. So I don't want to spend the full clip talking just solely about Manchester United. But of course they are the main headline there. That they need to be... this needs to be addressed. Like, you put LVG in charge of this team in this performance, people will be calling for his head. I'm not saying that Mourinho, people should now be calling for his head. His price actually of him being sacked got cut from 12-1 to 8-1. So the bookies definitely are trying to cash in on this potential Manchester United struggle that we've seen going forward. But apart from that, the other talking points is Stoke City really are struggling big time. They are playing abysmally, and it's funny because I actually touted them to go on to better things this year because they had the flair of the likes of Bojan and Shaqiri and some talented players in there, but they're just getting devoured at the back. Crystal Palace beating them 4-1. Alan Pardew's men, who again aren't the most impressive team to watch all the time, just made Stoke look bang average, even below average, just off the ball as well. And I thought that Crystal Palace I think 4-1 didn't flatter them, but it just shows clear weaknesses in Stoke's team that if they're not going to buck up their ideas very soon, they will be in for a hard fight to push back up the table. And Everton, by the way, who under Ronald Koeman, I watched their game closely, they have so much depth to bring on. I think it's De La Fua, is that how you pronounce his name? He comes off the bench. The guy is so talented moving the ball around freely. In the middle of the park, Gareth Barry looks dominant in there, almost as if he's rolled back the years. I think it was his 600 Premier League game and he manages to get on the score sheet. Up top, Romelu Lukaku is a player always going to cause problems for the opponent. And I think that overall, Everton, you see a manager here who's came in and refurbished the mentality of that team, a mentality that was at its lowest point towards the end of Roberto Martinez's tenure there, and now they have belief. Seamus Coleman looks good going forward. Great signing for Williams to come in and play at the back after Stones departed. So he's seen areas of weakness, he's addressed that, and now moving forward, and Palasi as well, who plays up top, who came in from Crystal Palace. They have great squad depth. They have a great manager there who knows what it takes to push a team past their expectation, as he consistently did with Southampton. So Everton are going to be a team that are going to be hard to break down going forward, and I'm excited to see how their season pans out. But let me know what you think. I rambled on for way too long for a Sunday. Got to go and cook the dinner, do whatever else people do on a Sunday here in LA. Probably go and get a kale salad usually. Hit me up on Twitter, as I mentioned, Francis_Maxwell. On Instagram, Francis Maxwell Host. What did you think of the weekend's action? Is Manchester United's downfall the biggest talking point for you? I'll speak to you guys very soon. Ciao.